If you are a tech business and you've tried to hire some type of Salesforce expert in the past to come into your business, help with a very specific project, and it didn't work out, there's usually 5 main reasons why that happens. I know that because I've been doing Salesforce for the last 10 years, running my own consulting firm for the last 4 years. And so this is a really common conversation that I have almost daily when we try to figure out if someone's a good fit to work with us or not. Chances are probably high that if you are in that industry, tech, you've probably tried to hire someone before, which is like a consultant or a freelancer or a friend of yours that has some Salesforce experience. And then you went through this process where it didn't really work out. So what I want to do in this video, share with you those 5 problems, how you can prepare yourself to be in a good position to hire the best consultant for you, and make sure that you avoid that in the future, which is basically just a lot of wasted time and money. So the main problem that I usually see that we would want to sort out first is the fact that there's just a lot of people out there that do Salesforce. So people will go on LinkedIn, they'll go on Trailhead, they'll go on these different places, find someone that knows Salesforce technically. They have the credentials, it looks good on paper, and then you hire them and you realize, man, they can't talk to me, or man, they don't know any of the stuff in our industry. They don't know e-commerce, or they don't know tech, or they can't read a room. So when we get in here, we have a really hard time communicating with them. They can't understand all these different signals that we give off to them when we're in with our different stakeholders. So there might be a number of reasons like that why it also didn't work on the consulting side. And I, again, want to help you avoid doing that by making sure that we go through these 3 main characters, okay? So the characters that you're looking for are internal readiness, which is a business thing, business needs, which is a little bit more business than consultant, and then the consultant obviously being able to deliver as well. So internal readiness, I've worked on projects myself where we get hired and then there's a great business need for Salesforce. We deliver a strategy that we know will help the business that either doesn't like Salesforce, they're blocking the budget, or they just feel skeptical about using Salesforce as like a long-term solution for whatever reason. Then we run into this issue where it's like, okay, well, we just did all this work for you. It looks good. We know it's going to work, but somebody at your business won't allow us to be able to execute on it. So rule number 1, make sure that people at your business before you hire are actually all in on Salesforce, as well as the solutions that potentially this consultant is going to provide for you. Business needs, I would say on your side as an operations manager, make sure that you also know what happens step by step in the processes that you want them to improve. So if you're currently hiring somebody to come in and help you with, let's say, forecasting, your RevOps operation, or sorry, your RevOps, you want them to come in and help you with forecasting and pipeline and implementing that inside of Salesforce. Okay, well, it's probably a good idea that you would know what those metrics look like, how you've tried to calculate that in the past, what the current problem is, what we're going to be looking for when we forecast, what the main pain point is for the business, and why we're even trying to redo it. All that kind of stuff you're going to want to know so that when the consultant comes in and asks you those questions, we don't feel like we have to go ask a bunch of other people or we get stalled out because the person that we're working with doesn't understand what that is. So business needs, a little bit more on the business side. Now, a good consultant, myself included, I would say we do this day in and day out with like a specific industry. And what I mean by good consultant is typically they niche down into like a specific industry. So for us, we niche down into tech. There's people that do just nonprofits. There's people that just do financial services. Now, when we're doing a niche like that, for us, like when we come in, we're going to probably have a pretty good idea of like what a forecast should look like based on all these other companies we've worked with. But at the end of the day, it is your business. It is a little bit more on the business side to prepare this versus the consultant. And then the consultant, obviously, they got to know what they're doing. So they need to be able to give you actual solutions of what they should be building and how they're going to go about doing that and why that's going to help the business. You know, feel free to pause it from here and see how these things all mesh up if we don't have all 3 of those. But that's kind of the main call out before we jump into the 5 reasons. All right. So all in all, the one thing we're trying to say is basically if you prepare 5 things before you hire this Salesforce consultant, you're going to massively increase the odds that your relationship with them is going to be much better. So AKA prepping this is going to make it 10 times easier to work with this consultant. All right. Reason number 1. So reason number 1 I see is there's no clear process built around it. I just mentioned that on the business needs. Now, a lot of the time, this is what I see, this type of scenario. So let's pretend I'm the consultant. I come in, I ask you as the operations manager, who is the main person that we usually roll up to 9 times out of 10. And we say, hey, in this process, when you have a hot lead come in and they want to talk to a salesperson, what does that process currently look like? How does the marketing team pass that over to a sales rep so they can actually call them? What do you do with this? And if we ask you that and you say, it depends, or I don't know, or I think it's this, or you take a guess at it, and then we go off of what you told us, it's going to make it hard for us to make sure that that was actually built out properly, right? Because we're going off your word. If you didn't go ask anybody else, you weren't really sure, then we're going to build something. You're going to spend time and money on it. And then your boss is going to show up or somebody else in the business and say, that's not what we actually do. We do X, Y, Z. And then this process that we built out is now pointless. There's no point of why we even build this in the first place because it's all wrong. So you want to avoid that altogether. And you can do that by documenting what this process is step by step. So I would say keep it simple if you haven't done this before. Go off of what does this do to start the process. So in that scenario I just gave you, the process would start when we get someone that's interested in speaking to us. That's what starts the process. Then there's going to be like 5, 6, 7 steps in between there of what we're going to do. And this is how the process ends. The sales rep will call the person. That's when it ends. Okay. I would also agree on the happy path. If you haven't heard that term, that just means trying to figure out if everything works out properly, this is the result we're looking for. Try not to get too caught up in the beginning about all these one-offs because we want to build systems around how things should work the majority of the time. We're not really trying to build a process for all these different one-off scenarios of what if this happens and that happens and this happens. You'll get too much in the weeds. You'll build something that is probably not going to work all the times that you need it to. So focus on the happy path first. Doesn't need to be perfect. Simple flow chart in like a Lucid or a Miro with some bulleted points is going to work out great. That helps us give a visual of what this process looks like and what you're expecting. And pro tip, like I said, use Lucid or Miro if it's a diagram. If it's some type of like ticketing system, I would use Monday, Jira, Linear, something like that I have below. And if it's more of an SOP that you're going to be doing or a standard operating procedure, you might want to consider something like Confluence or Notion to store all this in the long run for your business. So takeaway here, if the process is not clear, whatever this consultant builds for you is not going to be either. Reason number 2 is the decisions are too many. There's too many cooks in the kitchen here. There's not a clear owner. We don't have a clear direction on what actually needs to get built. This one happens pretty frequently as well. You usually see this where we jump in and you have all these different stakeholders that give us conflicting inputs. Okay, so the consultant will then try to build something. They get a different piece of feedback from this other person. So then they incorporate that and then they build it again. And then this person over here in marketing gives another piece of information and then we build that in there. So we start having all this rework that happens because there's not a clear owner. Not one person overrides all those decisions. They all have equal weight. So the consultant is just trying to do what the business is telling them to do and build out what you've asked for. The timelines will slip a lot in this and trust drops because then ultimately you end up with a process or some type of project that they worked on that really didn't work because there was too many people that gave their inputs and it didn't align with what the business really wanted to do. You can avoid this by assigning one business owner that's going to have a final say, whether that is the operations owner or the operations manager, the CTO, the CEO, somebody that has the overall say that if there's a bunch of conflicting information, we can go to that person and say, okay, this is what we've heard. What should we actually do? So have one person assigned. Everyone else can still give input, but this owner is going to decide, and this will help you to have decisions happen more frequent. So like week over week versus trying to have random things pop up in Slack and get approved. So one owner, one direction. All right, reason number 3, no backlog or priorities. So another issue would be we work with somebody, we come in, they have some immediate problems, but they don't have anything in a ticketing system. They don't have anything to where they can say, I thought about this or I notated this problem and it's not a priority right now, but I want to make sure we remember to fix this in the future. This also hurts if you do know all those things and you do a really good job of remembering them all, but it then makes it hard to prioritize which one is more important because they're all going to feel like They're a main priority for you as the operations manager because everything's on fire, right? You got to fix it now. Everything's urgent. You keep getting pinged about all these problems. And so it doesn't allow us to work on things that are actually going to move the needle for the business. So requests will come in scattered. We don't have like a consistent workflow. This also makes it annoying for your billing team because then the billing month over month is also going to be inconsistent. You know, if we do more work and we bill by hour, okay, maybe it's 50 hours this month and then 10 hours next month and then 15 the next month and then 75 the next month. Like it's just going to be too annoying for everybody involved to have it up and down. The consulting team, like for us, that makes it really hard too because we don't know how much bandwidth to give you, right? Typically in our situation, we'll make sure that we locate that before we work with you to say how many hours per month are we committing to. But in the future use, right? This could be also with like freelancers or somebody else that you're working with. This is just going to help to have this backlog or priority set. So everything is going to feel urgent. Like I said, consultants will stay busy. They're not going to really move towards outcomes. And the important work ultimately never gets done. You can avoid that by using one of those project management boards I mentioned. ClickUp, Jira, Asana, Linear, Aha, kind of goes on and on and on of what else you could use. Pick one and roll with it, especially if it's your very first one. I would go with an easy one like a ClickUp or an Asana or a Monday. Those are really easy to set up. Now, if you've been around the block a time or two with this stuff, Jira is a really solid one that most teams enterprise level will use. From there, you can then set up a system where you will rank priorities on these tickets. So you will stay organized on all the requests that you get from your teams. So this is a P1, a P2, a P3, and that Salesforce consultant will work on the most important ones. And you know that the top items are being worked on while you handle maybe some of the short-term immediate fires that have to be handled today. So clarity is what's going to matter the most on this. Is going to eliminate a lot of bad requests coming through as well as people working on the wrong type of stuff. So if everything is a priority, nothing is. This is why we want to prioritize things and have an actual backlog so we can refer to that. Okay, reason number 4 would be no definition of success. So in this situation, consultant will deliver what they would say is a feature. The leadership would be expecting some type of outcome or a specific result. And then we have a really hard time between those two people trying to understand if it worked or it didn't work. Now, this has happened definitely in my past as we've worked with different companies and we didn't have a definition of a success, or maybe we thought we did and that gets changed along the way by leadership at some point. You just want to make sure that whoever we're working with is in lockstep with their leaders, right? So if we work with the operations manager and you ultimately report to like a CTO or someone above you inside of the operations, VP of operations, you want to make sure that whatever you're asking that consultant to work on, you know that your bosses are approving of that and it's the exact way that they're going to build it. Otherwise, you're going to end up in this situation where who do you really have to blame, right? You're going to be annoyed with the consultant that they built it quote unquote wrong, and the consultant's going to be somewhat annoyed with the business because you're harping on them for just building what you asked them to build, right? So it hurts the relationship here. I would say avoid this by picking one outcome metric for the project. So back to that sales and marketing handoff. How do we actually tell if what we built is improving the business? Well, in that sense, it's probably going to be like lead response time. So if we build a more efficient process to get the lead that's interested in speaking to a sales manager or a sales rep, and we can look at the lead response time and we bring that from 5 minutes down to 60 seconds, you can now go back to your boss and say, we know the thing was built, was done correctly and worked because it improved this metric for the business. Improving that metric for the business ultimately is going to help us get more converted sales. So you want to tie it back to a specific outcome. Also some other examples here, sales cycle length, time to create a quote, case resolution time. Those are all really, really popular ones. And if you don't know, at least set some kind of default timeline. A month is always a good default timeline where we can look at this today and then in a month from now, what does it look like? You can review this week over week to make sure it's trending in the right direction that you want it to go. Again, features don't matter, outcomes do. We don't want to have this consultant come in and fix a bunch of page layouts or things that really don't matter to us that are just kind of nice to haves. We want them to focus on outcome-driven results. So this is actually going to help lead response time. This is actually going to help us convert more sales. This is going to help us reduce churn. This is going to help us solve cases faster for better customer support, more 5-star reviews. That's the way you want to be thinking about this. And then last but not least is this comes down to a lot more of the consultant you hire. So the consultant that you potentially have hired in the past was probably a builder and not so much a partner, and you really needed a partner and not a builder. There's always a space for both of these people, and I want to explain the difference. So a builder is somebody that comes in that if you hired someone in-house, they would be called a Salesforce admin. It's not a knock on the admin. That's really what you want to hire that person to do. They're usually not going to have as much info around strategy, but they're going to do a really fantastic job of maintaining what's been built. So they can build you fields, they can put validation rules in, they can do all the technical pieces. That's a really good example of like a builder. The partner is somebody that I would say who we are, right? So we come in, we exclusively work with the tech businesses or in the tech industry. So we have all these years on our team of people that have just been doing that day in and day out. And we can tell you a little bit better than that admin or that freelancer and say, hey, based on these other 50 SaaS companies that we've worked with, this is something that they've done that have always seen really good success with. This is how they built out a process to reduce the amount of time to get someone on the phone to talk to that lead, or to solve cases faster, or to reduce churn, or to set up a system to help you with renewals and have a better rate of getting your renewal signed. So we can talk through those things just because we do it day in and day out. And so we have all these things, and our team, we like to call those like playbooks. So, hey, here's a bunch of playbooks that these other companies that are really successful have run. This is why we think this would be a good fit for you guys. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. Most of the time, I feel like you do need a partner if you're in this growth stage startup. We work with companies trying to grow from 3 million to 100 million. In that situation, it's usually pretty rare that you have a bunch of people on the team that have done this a bunch of different times. And so hiring a partner that knows that type of stuff is going to be super beneficial. Now, if you're the reverse, you know how to do this, you've done it 1,500 times, you just need someone to technically do it for you, then yeah, hire a builder. They're going to be a little bit cheaper, and they're just going to do exactly what you tell them to do. So just keep that in mind, that at the end of the day, whatever you're asking them to build, that's what you asked them to build, and so they did it, right? They're not going to have much pushback. So in this situation where you needed a partner and you hired a builder, what you'll end up with is they're going to build what you ask for. They're not typically going to challenge you on anything, meaning if they see pitfalls that you potentially can run into, they're probably going to just hold their tongue, or they're maybe not even going to think about it and just build what you asked them to build. They're usually not going to have much strategy or enablement or adoption plans for you. Salesforce usually ends up becoming just like custom code that nobody knows how to use if you do not know how to do this yourself, right? If you do know how to do this yourself, then sure, you can avoid this because you are directing the boat, so to speak. But if you don't, then a lot of times you end up with all these cobwebs that people don't want. Think of these 3 questions just like you would hire a normal in-house hire, which are: how do you define success? How do you run a project week over week? What do you do when a stakeholder disagrees with you? I almost said strongholder. When a stakeholder disagrees with you. And whatever they answer there is going to give you a better idea of whether or not they're a builder or a partner. So in most situations, I would say talent itself is not going to be enough for what you're looking for. You're usually looking for somebody that can provide all that to create a great operating system for the business. Okay, so takeaways, these 5 main things. How do you avoid them? What do we need to do? Just recapping this real quick for you. Number 1 was document a process, right? So create a clear workflow before building begins. Assign one owner as number 2. We want to make sure one decision maker has final authority on anything that is about to be built. Number 3 is create a backlog, so a single source of truth ranked by priority over here. Number 4 is define one success metric, measurable outcome that you can track weekly. Like we said in our example, that was lead response time. And number 5, hire for partnership, not just for building. I would say most of the time people are looking for this one right here. They're not usually looking for a builder, but they do the reverse. They end up hiring a builder and not a partner. So look for a strategic thinker, somebody that knows your industry, knows what they're doing, can provide you with those playbooks of how things should work, and they're not just a technical skill to you. So prep plus fit is going to give you much better results here. All right, so if this seems interesting to you, you're in this position, you want to hire someone, you were a little bit hesitant before, you want the help inside your business to do all these things, There is a link in the description below. We can see if we're a good fit for you guys. If that is somebody that you want to work with on our team over here, we can check to see if we're a fit with you. Go through that discovery like I just talked about and basically see how your business works, see if we would know how to help you with those problems. And if the answer is yes, love to come in and help you implement all those strategies that we have seen successful at other tech businesses. So if that is you, looking forward to speaking with you soon. Thanks.